let's move to the Democrats for a second. So President Biden's out there being the president. He's doing what he has to do. He launched his campaign in Valley Forge a couple of weekends ago with the strength of democracy and the defense of democracy is a key theme. Tell me, we've talked a lot about Trump's coalition and how it's fragile and you only have to crack off a little bit. How do you feel about the president's ability and the Democrats' ability to bring the Democratic coalition back together, which I think on par is bigger than the Republicans, but also seems to be A, more fractious, and B, more upset with their own guy than they are with the other guy at the moment?
Well, it's always like that.
Okay.
I mean, that's just the way the party is. I mean, first of all, we're, a bunch of different groups, and holding that coalition together is always kind of fractious. It's become cliche, but the great unifier has been Trump. I mean, there may be people who don't think Biden's done enough, to fight climate change.
Right.
Okay. There may be people upset with him about Gaza and Hamas and his support of Israel. Okay, this guy wants to deport every single Muslim. Remember, again, going back to 2022, when the economy was going to absolutely destroy the party in power and Biden and red wave, all that was true. Yeah. I mean, those numbers were on inflation, gas prices, all that were there. It what held it together was the contrast with MAGA and Trump and it didn't, all those normal, what we would have called in the old days, like prior to the escalator, we would have said, oh man, this thing's done. No, I think it's that same contrast. And I think Trump now is coming into focus more. I mean, they did, look, let's face it. His people are smarter, better than he's ever had around him. Mm-hmm. They deserve a ton of credit for their ability to keep him off the radar, off the scope. I just don't see that now.
Right.
That's off. I mean, that's not going to happen.
No, the race has begun.
Yeah. And so he's going to be out there. That, like you said, he's going to lose it after New Hampshire or not.
But there's going to be something.
Yeah. And, like last night, he trashes everybody and then he's gracious, towards the end. And the press, of course, this is my point. Immediately, the commentators are all about how gracious he was.
Joe, this is yet again the night he became president.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So look, but that contrast is going to become clearer and clearer. Yeah. And I think the Biden campaign effort, now that it's started, is on exactly the right. Make that contrast very clear. Make the stakes exactly what they are. And I think that's incumbent on a lot of us. I think the president just raised more money in a quarter than anybody in history.
Right.
I mean,
$97 million.
That's pretty amazing when you actually think about like Obama. And I mean, some of those amazing quarters that we were blown away. How the hell did that happen?
And how many people have to give you that much, right? Because it's not all sorts of people giving you $2,900. It is, but it's also millions of people giving you $10.
Right. And so I'm saying it's a sign to me that the energy is there.
Right.
Within, you're going to hear a lot about, I'm pissed at him about this, or you Democrats didn't do that, or how come we, but in the end, I think that's what I think is fascinating. Is I'm positive that had we had a primary or a caucus, that Biden would be way higher than 50% in the results last night, and that we're all celebrating, or the press is celebrating, or fawning over a 50 to 20, 51, 21. 20.
Right.
Like, you add those three up, and it's like it literally is 50, 51, 47 or something. I mean, then you have some stragglers with Hutchinson picking up 7/10 or something. But who goes to their caucus and votes for Asa Hutchinson when he's getting 0.7% of the vote? But they did. I mean, just saying, that's not someone. Now, I don't know if they're staying home, but I really don't think they're coming out for Trump.
Right.
The same when you go up the towards Nikki and DeSantis, some numbers of those people are not going to vote for Trump in the general election. And he's the one that can't afford for his ceiling to go lower.
Right.
Biden, I think, if there weren't third parties, I think that would result in Biden's ceiling actually rising and going up. I still think that the biggest threat to democracy, the biggest threat to Trump actually being in the White House is not Donald Trump so much as RFK Jr. and No Labels and
Cornel West
and Jill Stein. It's the third parties. If they siphon up enough votes that make this be a 44-ish, 45 can win it kind of election, well, that's an election Trump could win.
Well, and to me, again, I think it's a feature, not a bug of this campaign. I think that Jill Stein is Putin's candidate. RFK Jr. is seen palling around with the likes of Bannon and Mike Flynn and everybody else. Cornel West was supposed to be the Green Party candidate, but he wouldn't do the work, so Jill Stein had to step back in, right, to try and carve off a small enough number of African-American voters. And then you've got No Labels, which, to me, has always been a stalking horse for Trump as much as they say they're not, because they have no possible way of winning an election. Right?
Interesting that in 2016, third parties are strong enough that it takes enough votes away, and a guy named Donald Trump wins with 46% of the vote.
Right.
Then in 2020, third parties are pretty weak, not very strong.
Right.
Biden gets to 51.
Right.
Trump's 46.7 isn't enough. He loses.
Right.
So we're going at it again. All of a sudden,
right.
It's just all coincidence.
Like
folks.
Mushrooms after a rainstorm.
Third party here, third party there. I was in a debate with Clancy with No Labels. You guys are against democracy. You don't want the people to have more choice. No, let's have all kinds of choice, Ryan. Let's have Hogan run as an independent, Manchin run as an independent,
right.
Huntsman run as an independent. Let's give the people all kinds of choice.
Right.
You're not splitting up the third party vote. You're splitting up the pro-democracy coalition with the guy who can get 45% of the vote and win. So you know why they're doing this. It's not a coincidence. This is all with a central theme that it helps Trump. That's all it helps. And I think I think there's donors who, wow, that's not a bad idea. I can give them some money and so do twofer, I can help Trump win. I do think there's a lot of well-meaning people who unwittingly have gotten caught up in that.
Yeah.
But that's why that's the biggest threat, I think. And that's why I think it's so important to keep that drumbeat up that, any third party, any support of a third party in this election. Normally we might
have at it.
Yeah, go have at it. But this time it's all spoiler, and it's spoiler for Trump, and that message has to get out there. That's if you said okay, forget Iowa, forget New Hampshire. It's still nothing has changed my thinking that that's the biggest threat that actually allows Trump to return to the White House. If it's a one-on-one race, particularly with what we saw, like when you look at 57% or whatever it was, of Haley supporters say I'll vote for Biden before I'll vote for Trump. When whatever the number, it was a fairly significant number of DeSantis voters said the same thing. I don't remember how big, but it was. I was surprised to see how big it was. When they're saying that, and by the way, this is a caucus that had half the turnout of last time.
Right, 10% of registered Republicans.
10% of registered Republicans. I know they'll blame it on the weather and everything, but and maybe the weather was the reason. But this was not like, wow, look at all the energy and all these people can't wait to vote for Trump if he's the nominee. That's not what I saw last night.
No, it was a drip, drip, drip kind of turnout. I'm sure there were people who had prepared for thousands and got hundreds, and people who prepared for hundreds, they got dozens and on down the line.
Yeah, no, because I've been in there, when Obama defeated Clinton. That was nearly a primary. So many people came out and voted, and this was in Democratic caucus where you actually have to stand there freeze for like 3 or 4 hours listening to speeches and stuff.
Right.
But it was like the numbers were like a primary. This thing was one of the really a big drop
Right.
off.
It was a Rotary Club
normal.
meeting.
Yeah. And and then to see the people who did come out, I mean, that's my point. The
Right.
people who did come out are saying, no, I think I might vote for a Democrat if
Right.
she isn't it. That's
Yeah, that's not normal.
not normal. You don't see that.